Hey, what's up, everybody? Mogollon Monster here. Welcome to Why the Fascination, or WTF, as I like to call it. I've been putting out that question for you guys for a couple weeks now, and finally somebody's answered the question. And my guest tonight will be answering his version of that question. And you might have heard he had a story recently narrated on Kerry Arnold's Bigfoot Odyssey. Kerry narrated one of his stories, which was awesome. But tonight he's with me, and he's got some amazing stories to tell. So, on that note, I'd like to welcome Mike Kirkpatrick. Thank you for being here with me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Pleasure as always. It's my honor too.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I understand that you've been referred to as a weird shit magnet, and I just think
Well,
that's funny as hell.
I've been called worse. I have been called worse. So yeah, anything you can throw at me normally sticks. So yeah, I wanted to get in touch with you and let you know about some of my experiences I've had with this old apartment building I used to live in San Antonio, Texas.
Well, right on. Yeah, you can jump right into that story, and
Would would love to. Would love to.
awesome.
Um, yeah. Well, like I said, I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I've lived here for 27 years now, and at one point in my life, my wife and I had separated, and I had to find a quick little place to go. And a friend of mine actually recommended me coming up to join him in his little apartment building. And when you looked at the place, you wouldn't think anybody would want to live there. But it was quiet and it was cozy, and the rent was perfect. It was cheap, nice rent amount. And so that's when I jumped in and accepted it and went in and talked to the manager, got an apartment. And that's when everything kind of started from there. Pretty much as soon as I moved in, I kind of noticed some things. This building was actually on Fredericksburg Road in San Antonio, and that used to be part of the old Spanish Trail. And it's been that road has been traveled by thousands and thousands of people for over 150 years.
Wow.
The building is so old that they actually have boot scrapers that are embedded into the concrete when you walk up to the front of the building. So you can imagine back in the day with the muddy, horse trails, and here you got to go scrape your boots off to get into this now rundown horror motel, because that's about what I call it. This place had so many different things going on at once. Um, like as far as the first thing I think I noticed was one day I was always cleaning because this place was so old. I used bleach all the time to clean my apartment. I just felt like felt cleaner, and there were some roaches running around, so I always used bleach. And one day I got a bleach all over my black pants. And I said, I'm never going to do that again. So from there on, I just started cranking on the cap to the bleach bottles, and I kept it in a little corner. There wasn't a whole lot of storage room for products like that, no under sink cabinets or anything. And this particular morning, it was a Sunday, I remember like yesterday, and football was about to start, and it was getting near 12 o'clock, and that's about the time you could buy beer. So I was doing all my chores before I could sit down and drink a beer and watch the football game. And that's what happened. I laid down the bleach bottle, cranked on the top, set it in the corner, grabbed the trash, took the trash out, and walked across the street. Conveniently, there was a grocery store right across the street from me. Still is. And so I walk back into the house, and the first thing I do is set my beer in the refrigerator, and I go to grab a trash bag, and I notice that the cap to the bleach bottle is off the bleach bottle.
Damn.
And I could not believe what I was, because I knew what I had just done. 15 minutes before that. So right there, I knew, okay, I thought, well, somebody has to have a key to my apartment and they're playing a joke on me. And it still gives me chills to this day because that's the first thing I ever noticed. I mean, I might have had a few experiences that happened right before me, but I never really paid attention to it. But this is the first time I actually caught what happened, and I saw it. So I looked for the bleach cap, and it's in the opposite corner, as far into the corner on the floor as it can possibly be.
Wow.
And it was underneath a countertop. Okay, and I thought, okay, someone's bothering me. Someone's bothering me, or maybe it's a ghost.
And you were in the house alone?
I was always alone. Yes, sir. I was always alone. No one had the keys to my apartment, and I actually worked at a hardware store at that time, and I replaced the deadbolt locks myself. So I knew it couldn't have been anybody else. I went and checked the windows, and just to make sure that no one had entry, I had one window in the back of the apartment, and I had two side-by-side windows in the front of the apartment, and everything was locked up. All the windows were secure. And I thought, oh wow, I have a ghost here. And so I kind of put it to the back of my mind, and I talked to my buddy that also invited me up there to stay with him in the same apartment building. And he was just kind of looked at me and giggled and didn't know what to say about it, And so just time went on, and it just kind of got, left behind and forgotten. And then I was continuing to work at this hardware store, and the second part about it is when I brought some carpet home. I did a favor for a company that was right next door to us, and their forklift had broken down. And when it did, they came over to ask if they could use ours. And so my boss said I could help them out. And once I did, he asked me if there was anything that he could do for me. And I said, well, how about a small piece of carpet? I got a new apartment, and I'd love to have a piece of carpet on the floor because I had old hardwood floors. And although they were nice, they just seemed kind of dirty, and the whole apartment seemed kind of dirty. So I kind of wanted to jazz up the apartment and make it my own little place because I was going through a separation at the time with my wife, and I thought this is going to be my place for a little while. So I got the carpet, I put it in my car, I got it home, I laid it all out. It was a beautiful carpet. It was about 8 by 12, and being a new piece, it had all the fuzz and fur all over it, and I didn't have a vacuum at the time. So I took a wet rag, a big wet towel, and I got down on my hands and knees. And if you're familiar with like a suede or a velvet, if you brush it one way,
it's got a pile.
Real smooth.
Well, right. Carpet's the same way. I used to install carpet with my uncle, and yeah, I know it has a pile, so you can, it'll be dark one way and light the other way depending which way you brush it. Yeah.
Exactly. So this was getting late at night, and I took that wet rag, and I started from the right side of the carpet, and I would wipe it left, and I would pick up all the fuzz and fur and all the little debris that was on this piece of carpet from manufacturer. And I just slowly went through it all the way, and I backed myself out of the little living room I had, and I got finished, and I picked up the towel, and I threw it in the kitchen sink. And my bed was right there. It was a little efficiency apartment. And then I laid down and went to sleep. And sometime during the night, I had to get up and go pee. So when I did, I went up and went. And I thought, oh, yeah, I have brand new carpet. I want to look at it. So I turned the light on. And when I turned the light on, it looked like people were dancing on that piece of carpet.
Oh, wow.
There were swirl marks. There were scuff marks from feet. And today, right now, as I speak, I have chills. Because
yeah, I can imagine, dude. I'm getting chills.
That's when I knew. That's when I knew something was with me. that apartment. Now, this wasn't too far along from the incident with the bleach. And so I couldn't go back to sleep. It was about 3 in the morning. I didn't have to be at work till 7:30. And I stayed up and I just looked at that piece of carpet and I couldn't believe the scuff marks, because I had got it so perfect that I'm a neat freak, and I also have some OCD issues. So I wanted it perfect when I first put it in the house. And after seeing these scuff marks, it looked like someone was dancing, like a couple were dancing on the carpet, round and round in a circle.
That's crazy.
And all this, yeah, and it was really bizarre, and it was just, I thought, my God, man, I've moved into a haunted apartment, and I just didn't know really, what to do. I mean, there was nobody to really talk to, or didn't know what to say. So I just continued paying rent and just continued going on with my life. There's not a whole lot I could do about it. I mean,
sure.
I knew this place.
Now you said,
I knew this place.
Sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
You don't have to call me sir, buddy. Calling me sir is like putting an elevator in an outhouse. It just don't fit. I always love that line from Roadhouse. But anyway, I was going to ask you, you had mentioned that you told your neighbor about what was going on and he just laughed. I mean, and this was in the same building this person lived in?
Yes. And he had lived there for at least a year previous. So that's where I was beginning to wonder if he knew something that I didn't. And I also kind of wondered maybe if he had brought me up there to see if I would experience anything, because maybe he was experiencing things and didn't know how to deal with it. So it was almost like he almost invited me to the party, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe what was going on. So, further down the road here, this stuff was just random. I mean, you never really could tell when something would happen. I never really had a weird feeling about anything, but I was out front one day getting my mail, and across the street there's a bus stop, and a friend of mine yells out to me, "Hey, Mike, hey, buddy." So I told him to come on over, and he came on over. I hadn't seen him for a long time, maybe 2 years or so, and I had lost touch with him because he had moved to Houston. Well, when I saw him there at the bus stop, he came on over, and we got back to talking, and I invited him in the house, and he was, sitting in my apartment and everything, and it was getting to the time where he was thinking about having to leave to catch one of the last buses. And so we looked up at this clock that I had, and it was reading like 7:30 when we looked up at it, and we were talking, continued to talk, and I think we were drinking a couple beers. And the next time we looked up, the clock was reading like 4:30, which was earlier than it should have been, and it was like by hours, like 3 hours earlier. And I said, well, the batteries are going out, and he's looking at me. He's a GM certified mechanic, and he has a mechanical mind, and he's looking at me like, that clock shouldn't be doing that. And so I said, no, man, it's just the batteries are probably dying. I've had it for a while. It was just a little cheap Walmart clock from Walmart, and I think I paid like $5 or something for it. So we continued to talk, and he said he was going to catch another route so we could spend more time together, and he was going to catch a whole entirely different bus. So that gave us like another hour of time to reminisce and hang out and drink a beer or two. And so the next time we looked up at the clock, it was reading like 1 o'clock. So this clock was moving backwards in time. which to me didn't make any sense at all. And I thought if the batteries were going to die, if the hands were going to quit working, that maybe the hands would drop down to the 6:30 position. But this clock was moving, just functioning as fine. There was no second hand on it. There was only the hour hand and the minute hand. But every time we looked up at it, it was an earlier time and an earlier time. And that's when my friend told me, he said, man, you have spirits.
Huh.
And
Wow.
I didn't know what a spirit was. I mean, I know I've heard what ghosts were, but I've never really thought about spirits. Just the word itself, it kind of scared me when he said that, because I know he's a Catholic, a devout Catholic. He was raised in a strict Catholic home by his grandmother. So he had maybe more of a religious type of background than I ever did. And when he told me I had spirits, that kind of scared me. And
yeah, I can imagine.
It was just another one of those things that it just happened, and I couldn't explain it. So what I did when we left, I took the clock off the wall, and I looked at the back of the battery, and the battery was installed fine. And he says, man, it's not the battery. And I was like, what do you mean? And he says, well, you're gonna have other things happen here. And so I grabbed the clock, and I was going to walk out with him across the street until his bus came. So we did. I locked the door and walked out, and I took the clock and I threw it in the little dumpster. There was like a little 4 foot high dumpster, and I threw it away. I thought, well, maybe that'll just keep everything away from me. So I did. I threw everything up. The garbage was full. It was a full trash can ready to be dumped the next day. And I walked across the street with him, and his bus finally came, and I said, okay, it's time to go, man. All right, I'll catch you later. Well, now you know where I live. Come back and see me anytime. Well, he never really came back to see me.
Yeah, I didn't think he would.
And he never came back to see me. He called me, but he never wanted to come back over. So when I walked, I took off the next morning to go to work. And first thing I do is I look for that clock, and that clock's still sitting in the dumpster. And it was dark in the mornings at that time, and I took off to work, and when I came home, I made a right into the alley. We only had alley access parking. And when I turned into the alley, that little Walmart clock was leaning up against an empty dumpster. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe somebody picked up the clock last night after I walked past it for the second time, and maybe they tried to put a battery in it and it didn't want to work, or what was the problem. But that clock was leaning against the dumpster, and the dumpster, all the trash was gone.
Sure.
So obviously the dumpster had been emptied, and I don't know what the story is with that clock. I don't ever want to see it again, and I never want to see another clock run backwards again either.
Yeah, I've never had that happen to me. I mean, I have a clock sitting behind me here this side, and I just pulled the battery on it.
It was an unbelievable
it's right twice
experience. A day. It was just really bizarre. And then, I always had a cold feeling in my apartment. Now, I lived in probably one of the shadier type of apartments. If you look, maybe if in the future you can look this place up, you can see kind of where I was located, and it was just always cold in that house. You couldn't get it. And I love the AC. I love to be cold because I live in San Antonio. It gets like heat indexes here to like 110.
Yeah, I'm in Arizona. I know all about it.
Yeah, exactly. You live in Arizona, so, but Yeah, I mean, I'm working in a hot warehouse all day long. I want to come in where it's cool. And I rarely had to turn on the AC. And I wonder, I've heard of, haunted places being cold, and you could feel cold spells and things
Yeah.
of that nature. And it was just another one of those things that I just went on with it. I was comfortable at this point with my little apartment. I loved it. I had already started filling it up with furniture, and I got a fish tank, and I got a TV, and so I was living the bachelor's life again after the separation from my wife, and I didn't know if I was ever going to get back with her again. So this is, like I said, this was going to be my home. And so I was just dealing with whatever was going on here. And then we began playing poker, and my friend didn't like us smoking in his apartment. So I stood up on the second, he was on the second floor right above me. His apartment was the same footprint as mine. And I stood up, and we had a railing that went around, a little steel railing.
Right.
And I'd lean up against it and smoke my cigarettes and just kind of daydream while I was smoking my cigarette and everything. And out of the corner of my eye, well, it wasn't even the corner of my eye. It was almost directly in front of me, probably maybe 10 degrees off to my left. I see a window that's in the stairwell tower, and I see a man walk past it. Now, when you walk past that window, there's only 3 more feet, and then you're up on the second floor deck, just on the same deck that I'm standing on. Yet he never came through the doorway. I could see him pass through the window, but he never came through the doorway. This man was 5 feet tall, maybe 5'1", stretching 5'2". It's hard to tell, because he had an old fedora hat on, and he was wearing a zoot suit.
Really?
Which, if you're not familiar with, if any of the listeners aren't familiar with, that's an old style suit that the Mexican style people would wear in like the 30s and the 40s.
Yeah.
And I think it went out of style soon after the 40s. So I ran into my buddies, who they're all in there playing poker, and I ran in there, and I'm like, you guys are never going to believe what I just saw. And every one of my friends, all 4 of them, at the same exact time said, what, a ghost? And I said, yeah, I just saw a ghost, man. I don't know what I'm looking at, but I just saw a ghost. He looked a little cloudy, but it was clear as day that it was a person. But it just looked a little maybe cloudy is the word, maybe fuzzy might be the word.
Sure.
He just looked like from another time.
Huh.
He was definitely from another time. He was a short little Mexican guy. He had a mustache, a nice long mustache that came on either side of his mouth and came down to his chin. I think they call it like a Fu Manchu.
Sure.
And he had a fedora hat on, and he had a blue and white suit on. I could only see him from like the waist up, because of the way this window was. I couldn't see anything from his waist down, but I could tell that he was only about 5 feet tall. And there's a lot of Mexican people that are short statured,
Sure.
So it made total sense. But he was a grown man. I could tell he was a grown man, but he wasn't from our time.
Sounds
And
like a residual haunting.
Yes, that's a residual haunting from what I understand, where it's like a tape player being played over
Exactly.
and over and over. Well, I know it was a residual haunting because I didn't only see it one time, I saw it twice.
The same exact thing?
A couple months later, I saw the same exact person, the same exact movement, the same exact window, and about the same time of night. So I thought this has got to be a residual haunting. At that time, I started watching Ghost Adventures because I thought maybe I can get some answers, or maybe, I was really getting interested in these ghosts.
Sure.
And all these things that were going on around my apartment and in my whole apartment building. This whole apartment building isn't very big. I think there's only like 14 units. It's 14 or 16 units, and I'm thinking it's probably 14. So it's rather small. But this place was built in, I believe, the 20s. So you can imagine that how many people have come and gone in 100
years. Yeah.
There's been a lot of people, a lot of death, a lot of celebration.
It's a lot of energy.
A lot of energy, exactly. You took the word out of my mouth. A lot of energy. And, and so again, I just kind of thought, okay, maybe I kind of almost felt lucky because nothing was hurting me. Nothing was really scaring me too much. It was just little things here and there, weird things that, most normal people, I guess, hopefully they don't get to see. But then I started hearing the children play. And this would happen at any time of the day. It was normally during the day, a few times at nighttime. But I could hear children playing, and no children lived in this apartment building at that time.
Huh.
No
Wow.
children at all. And I would hear them, and I've heard of, it would always sound like four little girls and like playing Ring Around the Rosie, because you could hear them laughing, and you could hear them like almost to where you could almost hear them breathing and just making little kids noises that they do, like they're playing. And so I thought, I'm going to sneak up on these children, and I'm going to catch them, and I'm going to see them. So I would get up out of my chair real slow so I didn't make any squeaking or creaking, and I'd walk real close up to the door, and at first I would look out the peephole. Of course, I couldn't see anything, but I lived in a little cove where there was a stairwell there, and then there was another small opening, and it seemed like they were just around the other side of the opening where I couldn't see until I walked out of my door 3 or 4 feet. So I couldn't see anything as I'm peeking out through the little looking glass in the door. So I would unlock the door real slow and real quiet, and I could still hear them playing. They're skipping, and it sounds like they're like running around in a circle or something, and they're laughing and giggling. And as soon as I pull the door open, there's complete silence.
Wow.
Nothing.
Wow.
This had happened to me on several occasions. I want to say between 5 and 10 times, maybe 6, 7, 8 times this happened to me. And normally it was during the day, but I also heard them at nighttime as well. A few times, just a couple times. I want to say twice. So 6 or 7 times during the day, and like twice during night. That's almost 10 times I experienced the little children when nobody lived, no kids lived there at all.
That can be a little unnerving, I'm sure. That's weird. I mean, yeah, I've had experiences, but it was pretty. There were no sounds. I didn't see a ghost, or actually once I did. Well, it was an orb, but yeah, I've never heard things. So that to me, that's fascinating. That you're hearing kids outside your door.
Yes, and like I said, that was the most prevalent thing that happened. That's what happened the most often. Like I saw the man twice, and the clock went on, and the little bleach thing happened. But another thing that would go on was my wife decided to come down to visit me, that we were thinking about getting back together. And she was in my house one night, and She came actually from Austin to stay the whole weekend. And I had an oriental carpet tacked up against my front windows because there were real bright fluorescent lights up there. And no matter what type of blinds I put up, it was too much light that was coming into my apartment.
Sure.
So I took an old oriental rug and I hung it up in front of those windows just to block those lights out. So actually, when I closed the lights off at nighttime, it was really dark in my apartment. You couldn't barely see anything. And my wife had woken up one of the weekends she came down. I don't know if it was the first weekend, but it was pretty close to one of the first times she had come back to visit me, and we were trying to work things out. And she had woken up in the morning, early in the morning, 1 or 2, I think it was, in the morning. And she said that she had seen a big black smoky mass up in the right-hand corner near the ceiling and the 2 walls in the corner where the 2 walls and the ceiling meet. She said that there was a big smoky black mass that was darker than my room.
Wow.
And it was moving and it was misting, and she said it just dissipated into nothing. And that one gave me the chills.
Yeah,
because
that's
now I'm dealing with dark
creepy.
things.
I've heard about manifestations like that before, and that's
and
no thanks.
yeah, man.
Excuse me.
This was really this was kind of putting me over the edge about this place. And with her, coming back to visit me, I was thinking maybe going up to Austin to live with her. And but I had a job here in San Antonio, and I was basically stuck. And I loved my job, and I had been promoted twice in a year.
Nice.
And I had been given 3 raises in 1 year. So this was a good company that I was working for, and I didn't want to leave the area of San Antonio. I love the city. I love the people. I love the culture, the music. We had so much to offer here. There was plenty of concerts and stuff to go to, which I enjoyed, and it was a really, really great place. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to deal with it, And so I told her, I said, there's no way I'm moving up there. You're going to have to come down here to move. If we want to get back together, you're going to come back to San Antonio. And she had lived here all her life. So there was no problem with that. She decided that's what she was going to do. She was going to come down here, and she was going to rent another empty apartment that was on the upstairs floors. And I was going to keep my little efficiency, because the efficiency was just too small for both of us. We tried it at first, and it was just too tight. So we just decided we're just going to get another apartment. So that's what we did. We talked to the manager. She let us get another apartment. So we actually had 2 apartments in the building.
Wow.
And sometimes we'd come down to my place to cook dinner, and then we'd go up to her place and watch TV, or just look out the window at the street view, and just kind of hang upstairs with the breeze. And we'd open our windows and just enjoy the breeze and stuff. And so eventually we got a bed big enough for both of us to spend the night in either apartment. And so it just depended. Some nights, because we were still going through some things, some nights she stayed in that one upstairs, and sometimes I stayed in the one downstairs.
The doghouse.
Sometimes separation is good for a fighting couple. So that's kind of how that all went on.
Absolutely.
But she started telling me that, after about 3 o'clock, around the witching hour, which is, I think, the total opposite of when Jesus was crucified. That's why they call it the witching hour. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, she would hear somebody knocking on her front door. And she would get up and she would go to answer the door, and there would be nobody there.
Wow.
And being a wooden decked second floor story deck, she would have heard anybody's footprints walking away from the door or walking up to the door. but she could never hear anybody walking away. Like, you know, we thought, well, what could be going on? And I'm thinking 3 o'clock. Well, I was watching the Ghost Adventures show at that time pretty regularly, almost every week. And it, you know, it's when they first started playing those episodes, and they had mentioned something about the 3 a.m. How that's the witching hour, and demons like to come out at that time. And I'm thinking, okay, I got a black mass in my apartment. I'm hearing little kids. Are these little kids? Maybe it's a demon making these little children sounds, and a demon's trying to draw me out of the apartment for some reason. Or what is going on with this place? So I told her, you know, I had told her a few things about what had happened to me, but I finally ended up explaining everything that was going on. And she really wasn't that freaked out about it, really. She was just kind of like, well, you know, they're just old spirits. There's a lot of people that lived here. And at one point in the 70s, in the 1970s, she had only lived like 2 buildings down the street, 2 little complex buildings down the street. And she started telling me stories about this old apartment building, how it used to be infested with drugs and crime.
So she knew the neighborhood.
Ambulance.
Yeah.
What was that?
She knew the neighborhood and the history.
Oh, yes. She knew the neighborhood. Yes, sir. And so she knew that there was a lot of crime, and the police were there all the time, and the ambulances were there all the time. And it had a bad reputation for the alcohol and the drugs and the riffraff type sort of set of people. And, you know, it just got to where she was kind of used to it, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it didn't seem to bother her, but this knocking on her door went on till 3 a.m. And one night I happened to be up there with her when it did knock. And it was a 3 knock. Knock, knock, knock. And I jumped up out of bed because I knew exactly what it was. And I ran. I ran from her bed to the front door in probably 3 or 4 steps, and yanked the door open as hard as I could. And there was nobody there, but I said, I have Jesus on my side, and I'm not afraid of you. Please quit knocking on our door. Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And after that, we never heard it again.
Awesome.
It was just so awesome that I actually chased them away, to chase these ghosts away. And I always wondered if somebody else's door was getting knocked on because I told them to leave us alone, you know. But after that, we never heard anybody knock on our door again. And I had known a couple people that had passed away over time through the years. I didn't happen to live at this place at the time, but I had known a few other people just through meeting people and friends of friends of a few other people passing away in this apartment building. And one of them was my buddy. He was a poker buddy of mine named James. And James would play with us all the time, and he was dying of cancer, man. He had esophageal cancer and throat cancer. He had 2 cancers from smoking. So we'd always get together and play poker, and they had cut a little hole in his throat, so he had I forget what you call it, a tracheotomy or something like that. And so, like, if he wanted to talk, he had to, like, close his throat or put his hand over his throat and then kind of, like, talk. And he talked like Froggy from the Little Rascals gang. And he talked really rough and raspy, but he would sit up there and he said, I'm going to die here. I'm not going into hospice. I'm not going to go into no old folks home. And, you know, he had been a veteran, so he was able to go and get a lot of different type of care, but he wanted to stay with us. So he had come up to the building and rented one of the little efficiency apartments, which was even smaller than mine.
Wow.
But it was enough for him. And we always kept our eye on him. We fed him and made sure he was getting a bath and making making sure his toenails were clipped and his fingernails were clipped, and we were taking care of him because we loved James. You know, he was a good man and a good guy. So when he finally passed away, it hurt all of us. There was 4 or 5 of us regular guys that would play poker with him every Friday, and it hurt us, you know, when we lost him, because he was almost as old. He was so old that he could almost be our father, but not quite. He wasn't quite that old, but we all looked up to him as a father figure. And so after he passed away, we continued to play poker.
I know the story that you're gonna tell, and
it's pretty amazing, to be honest with you, Mo.
Yeah. So to all the listeners, you know, I've heard this story before, and it's pretty intense, and I got goosebumps. So you guys will enjoy this story. And right after this story, we're gonna have to, you know, stop for a little while. All right. Well,
that's that. If I could continue, I'll make it kind of quick.
Yeah, man. No, tell this story. This is a great story.
So my buddy James finally had passed away, and in honor of James, we always made him. Now I'm getting emotional.
That's all right, brother.
But we'd always leave him some chips and a chair and a beer, and for him, and we'd play around him. So, you know, we'd always just skip him, but he was always there with us in spirit. And we played poker for 10 years in a row, every Friday, sometimes Friday and Saturday, and sometimes Friday and Saturday and Sunday, because it was just us guys. None of us really had girlfriends, except I had a wife at the time. And, you know, so we really didn't have a whole lot to do. And so we played poker. Like, it was a real popular thing there at that time. So once we would get done playing, we would pack up everything and put all the poker chips in the box, and, you know, fold up all the chairs and everything else. And then we would go and wait till next Friday. Well, next Friday would come, and we would go pull the poker chips out of the closet, set them down on the table, and open up the poker chip case, and there would be like 10 or 15, 20 poker chips missing. And we knew we filled up that poker case to the brim, just like we had bought it from the store. And now we have poker chips missing. So my host, my buddy Rick, he's freaking out. He's like, where'd all the chips go? And nobody could, you know, why would we take the chips? We filled it up. It was full when we set it up here. Set it in your closet on Friday. So we started taking the cushions out of the couches, lifting up the couches and everything else, trying to find these damn poker chips. Yeah. And they are missing. They're gone. So, and actually, one of the dealer buttons was gone at the same time. There's a dealer button, and then you have the big blind button or the small blind buttons, and the dealer button was gone. So we would just kind of overlook it and think, okay, whatever, you know. We never really thought about maybe it could have been James until the next time we'd go back to the closet and we'd pull the case for the poker chips down, and now all the chips are there, the dealer button's there, the small blind button's there, the large blind button is there. Everything would be replaced. Wow. Like James had known that we were getting angry that he was taking the chips away. And that's all we could say is finally, my buddy Rick, one day said, hey, it must be James that's taking these damn chips, because they're either disappearing or they're back in the box. They're disappearing or they're back in the box. And so we all just accounted it to that it was going to be, you know, Mr. James. And ever since then, Ever since then, we started playing. After we, you know, pretty much figured out it was probably him. After that, we didn't have any more real trouble with the missing chips. But that missing chips scenario went on for a good 2 months or so before we really figured it out. And every time we'd look at that case, we always would bet. We'd always say, "I bet you it's full," and another guy would say, "I bet you it's not. I bet you there's chips missing." And we'd open the case and there'd be chips missing. And it was just unbelievable. The chips weren't leaving that apartment. They were in James's possession.
Yeah.
I already know that.
Oh, once you
sure.
you guys dealt him in and gave him his props, that's all he wanted. It seems to me, anyway.
I think that's the truth. I think that's the truth. And but yeah, this apartment building, man, I don't know if I got too much more to share about that. I have some more stories, and maybe in the future we can talk about.
Absolutely, man. I would love to have you back.
Well, I'd be honored. I'd be honored to come back. I love sharing my story, and a lot of weird things have happened to me. I don't know if I'm cursed or blessed, but I'll take the blessed.
Right on. Yeah, blessed always works.
Yeah, that's the way I gotta look at it. You gotta be positive sometimes. And if anybody's listening, I would recommend, if you have a story, you want to get it off your chest, go to Mogollon Monster. He's so easy to work with, and he's a pleasure. He's a true gentleman. And
Thank you.
I would love to come back, and I would hope maybe that anybody that's listening to this would like to get their story off their chest. This is the person to go to. Go to Mogollon. But that's about it for that apartment building. And I no longer live there, but that place is still occupied. And I truly feel sorry for those souls that are still living there that have to deal with that would deal with the stuff that I had to deal with, because I know somebody else is going through it too.
Oh, well, I'm sure. Yeah. If it's it's in that building, then it's not going anywhere, I don't think.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I'm no longer there, but I pass by there quite often. Maybe once a month or maybe twice a month I pass by, and I always look over there at that place. And I tell you what, it still gives me the heebie-jeebies.
No doubt.
Still to this day.
Well, listen, Mike, I want to thank you so much for coming on and joining me. That was amazing stories, some stories you told there. And I definitely look forward to the next time that you come on.
All right.
I think the listeners will really enjoy these stories. And once again, thank you so much. But I did want to ask, actually, I know, how did you, having Carrie, narrate one of your stories, and now getting on here and telling your stories, I mean, how has that helped you? I mean, help you get things off your chest, or?
Yes, yeah, it's really helped me. I think letting it go and letting that weight off and just putting it kind of behind me, not away from me, because it's always going to be with me, but it just kind of, I can pick it up and set it to the side and get it kind of away from me, where I'm less dwelling on it, and I feel like I'm refocused, and I have a new focus on life now, to maybe where it is sharing some of my stories or experiences with others to try to help them through what I've had to go through.
Right on.
So I think I'm trying to use this as a teaching tool, to teach somebody else who might be afraid or shy or just doesn't know or nervous about telling their story. I would want the people not to be so nervous and not to be so shy, and just get it off your chest if it's bothering you, or just let's get it out there for the fun of it.
Sure.
If you've had an experience and you think it was funny or crazy or stupid, no matter what kind of story it is, if it's bothering you or if it's just unsettling to you, it might help you to get it off your chest. It has for me.
Right on.
It's been wonderful, man.
I'm so
like
happy.
I was on cloud nine.
Say that again?
I just felt like I was on cloud nine, and I do now too, just to get this off.
Oh,
it's
right
like
on,
a
man.
rush. It's a rush, man. I hope everybody could feel like the way I feel.
Awesome. All right, buddy. Well, listen, we'll do this again real soon. And once again, I want to thank you. And I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. I appreciate it.
All right, brother. You take care of yourself.
Okay. You too now.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. So that was Mike Kirkpatrick, everybody. That was awesome of him to come on and share his stories. And he's got a lot more stories. More ghost stories. He's got UFO stories. He has a Bigfoot story that Carrie Arnold told on Bigfoot Odyssey, and he wants to retell that, which I think is awesome. And that's what it's about. That's why I'm here, answering, trying to find out why the fascination, what keeps you guys coming back all the time, and I want to hear your stories, and it's as simple as that. I'm thrilled that Mike shared those stories. So it's your turn. So you can send your stories to monstermogollon@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on Facebook, Mogollon Monsters with an S. What else? Just, hey, hit me up, guys. I want to hear your stories. And thanks again to Mike for coming on. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Probably within the next week or two, we'll have some more stories out. But I need your stories so I can keep this going and really, entertain and help. And you see this flag behind me. I sit in front of it, but you can bet your ass that I stand behind it. And I think we all need to stick together, especially in this time right now that we're going through. We've never experienced anything like this, and I'm glad to see that everybody's stepping up. All the creators are stepping up and putting out more content to keep you guys occupied. And we're just doing what we can, and I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm having a blast, and I want to thank everybody for listening and all the great comments and emails that I've been getting. So keep the emails coming. I was thinking something else too. I just did that little slideshow and on the last video, and I'm thinking of doing what I would call junk drawer photos. I had mentioned the last time that you go into any house to have a junk drawer, and there's usually undeveloped rolls of film in there, and I find it's the same thing with my camera. So if you guys want to go through your camera, find your best pictures or your worst pictures, I don't care. If you'd like to see them on this channel, I can post them and give you credit if you want credit. It's up to you, but feel free. Send me your stories, send me your pictures, and we'll get them out there. Again, it's monstermogollon@gmail.com, or check me out on Facebook, Mogollon Monsters. And on that note, I'm going to bid you guys a farewell, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And so thank you, Mike, for doing this with me. And we'll catch you guys next time. All right? Take care, everybody. Peace and God bless. Geez, I almost forgot. If you guys like this video and you want to see more in the future, hit that subscribe button. and also hit the like button. And since you're there, you might as well share it. So that would be awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. All right.